Hello. We're here.
What's up?
We're all here, guys. This is the oh, wait, you froze up a bit. There you
Oh,
go.
hello.
You're back. You're back.
Am I
Don't
good? Am I
worry.
good?
All fine. So we are here with episode 1 of Hero Select. We have Blasé of the Houston Outlaws here with us. I'm on the ranch, as you can see. You probably can't see it on the stream, but I'm on the ranch with you, Jeff, to do this interview. I'm live on set, live on location, to do this one. And first question: how are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. They're slowly but surely emptying our offices because of the coronavirus. So very soon, I'll probably be one of the few people left in the entire NVHQ.
Ah,
Because pretty much all the players and staff are probably going to be working from homes, and we need to be here because of the studio, because we start filming next week for Contested. So it's going to be a little crazy. I saw that you told me earlier that you and Raucus went and bought out a bunch of toilet paper. You and
yeah.
I.
We got like two big things of toilet paper, and you got like a really big thing of paper towels. We got a bunch of food. Yeah, just a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff. Well, that's good. I noticed as well when I was setting up this for you, because there was I'm juggling a bunch of schedules. I'm getting a bunch of people. Like after this, we'll probably have like the gravy. We'll have a bunch of people. But I was like, setting up for you. You're a man of few words, Blase, because I said, hey, do you want to do an interview? You're like, yeah. I'm like, then you're like, Thursday. I'm like, okay, cool. Thursday, 2 p.m. All right. And then I'm like, okay, time to do the test call. Okay. and then,
I
and
mean,
that was it.
okay. It doesn't help that I just like kind of woke up like less than an hour ago. So,
Yeah, but this is over multiple days, Jeff. This is over
uh,
multiple days. You're not Sleeping Beauty over there, though you are very beautiful.
thank you.
So I guess since we should actually get into the show to start out with here, for the first episode here, just to explain it to everyone, is that we're really focusing on we're gonna start with players, we're gonna do coaches, we'll do personalities and stuff, and Overwatch, and sort of the journey from the crazy Wild West of Endemic, Wild West, as you can see from my background, Endemic, pre-Overwatch, how they got into it, to Overwatch League, how they feel they've changed and evolved since then, the crazy stuff they felt has happened to them, how teams have changed them, how teams have been different experiences, and like what sort of advice and experiences they could give about their journey through Overwatch, hence the name Hero Select. How do you feel about that branding, by the way, Hero Select? You don't have to like it. You don't have to lie to me.
It's pretty good. No,
It's pretty
I
good?
actually like it. Yeah, here select. You
Okay.
select, random people or players. I like it.
That's good. I'm glad you like it because you were the first guest since I think Houston was a very good topic. But we'll get to Houston at a later date. Um, so, starting out with, there's 3 important questions with Overwatch, Blase, especially your journey in Overwatch, which is why, when, and how. And to start out is why Overwatch? Why there? We had this Exodus in 2016. There were other games that came out, I believe, like Lawbreakers. No. There was a
Ooh,
Battleborn, and
Battleborn.
then later
Yeah.
in the year Paladins. And I know originally you were in TF2, right? I don't know if we ever played against each other. Did we ever play against each other in TF2? Because
Um,
I was in
I don't
TF2
think you
as well.
were. Yeah, I remember you play, but like I was like a pug lord back then.
A Pug Lord.
Yeah, I like pug more than I like actually competed because like I just want to compete.
Hmm.
Pugged, but I
Okay.
pugged
So you were a
against
lot
NA
of
players and
like
stuff.
NA mix and a lot of Pug NA type of stuff. That's what it
Hmm.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember I was like, I recognize this name from somewhere, but I don't remember. I don't remember exactly from where. And then I remember you're on, moving on to that is like when we talk about the win and the how for you in Overwatch. You were on your very first team. Was it work in progress, aka as Rob describes it, Winston in Paris?
Yeah.
It was work in progress, which had a bunch of TF2
Yeah.
people, right?
Yeah.
Who were those players? It was like Cloudmaker and AIM and some of them.
I mean, originally it was like the roster changed a lot because like I played with like a couple of like different like tier 3 teams I think
Yeah.
it was. But this roster it was like JCB. I think Cloudmaker was on it at some point. Uh, Jameson.
Rob, you had Rob,
Uh,
right? That's how it
Rob.
came
Yeah,
up for
Rob
you.
was on it too. I don't remember like the whole roster, but like there's a bunch of players that played during like that time. Don't
Yeah,
play
because
anymore,
it was
so
like pretty crazy because
yeah.
teams back even now, but especially if you're low level, you just would shuffle rosters like all the time, because someone would be like, I'm not making any money, I need to go back to school, or I need to work, or I just don't like this game, so I would leave. How did that exactly lead into you? So let's say from TF2, you're a pug lord, right?
Mhm.
You're playing and you're like, why Overwatch? Were you looking to compete? Were you looking to just play? Were Cloudmaker and Aim and Rob and them, were they just like, yo, Jeff, like, let's go play Overwatch and dominate because this game we're gonna rock, because Aim and Cloudmaker in particular were a bunch of edgelords.
I mean, at the time, just you know how like every TF2 player was like, oh, I want to like Overwatch is coming out. They want to see how it is. So I think almost like every TF2 player like went and played Overwatch, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I kind of do want to compete in this like a brand new game. I did like compete in TF2. Like I did Open, got second in Open with Cloudmaker's team, and then played in IM for like a few matches, and then we like the team boomed. But yeah, we
Classic.
just
That's a story
that's a
as old as
classic
time.
Cloudmaker. Oh,
Especially with Cloudmaker. Most people don't know who Cloudmaker is, but he's a legendary TF2 persona.
yeah.
If you were from that community, a definition of an edgy teenager. Very legendary person. So the team WIP then in 2016 was just all these TF2 people that sort of filtered in and out to sort of just make this first iteration of a team to compete. Because you guys played in like the I Buy Power and like Gosu Gamer weeklies like really long ago. You played against the old Hammers Esports and even LW like Blue, I think, at one point. That's
Yeah,
like,
but it's yeah, Immortals, like all the really old rosters.
yeah, it was very old. That was old. It was old Hammers before it was like even us, or it became Chavs. It was like just a really shitty like tier 3 roster with Hammers at the time. So I mean, okay, so you just followed TF2 into it, and so you wanted to compete. That was your end goal, was to play, like, make money in Overwatch, or just to compete in Overwatch, or was it like, what was the drive for Overwatch in particular, moving into 2016?
I think definitely in the beginning, it was just to try out, see how it is, you know, just try to get into the competitive scene. Um, I like, I don't think it was like a goal to like go pro in like Overwatch until like Overwatch League was like announced.
Really?
So yeah,
So
but
even
like
during like contenders and stuff, it was never, or like I guess it was announced by then. So then it was your goal.
I meant like it was before like you know there was like a huge gap in you know like remember when Blizzard canceled like all like you're not allowed to like do Ghost Gamers and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
and there was like a really big gap where there was just like no tournaments and just no one was like
The
really competing.
2017 Dead Zone. I do
Yeah,
remember.
yeah, yeah. That was awful.
So
Then
were
I
you on
think
the
I
risk of
like
like quitting then, or were you just like, or you were at that point you were
no,
still just like, okay, I want to compete still.
I still play like ranked every day because like it was just like my main game at that point. So you know, just might as well play, try hard in it. And eventually like Overwatch League got announced, and we're like, oh shit, you know, just
Just keep grinding.
yeah, I might keep grinding. Yeah.
Okay. And for 2017, I also saw, they don't actually have any results on this because obviously I do a little prep work for this. Um, but for 2017, you played on a team called Straight Outta Comp Q, and they have zero information on Liquipedia about this team. And I also
Yeah.
see that, I mean, also you guys didn't, like, if I'm being honest, because like for WIP as well, you guys made an average earning of $31 over your team lifetime.
Yeah.
Made some mad bank. And straight out of Comp Q, it doesn't even have these results. I don't even remember this team. And this is like, I was playing around here. I don't think you guys ever played against us, though I saw you played against the old EG, and like some other teams around that time. But like, who was on that team? Like, what was the team that was that for straight out of Comp Q? Because it was around for a while.
So after Straight Outta CompQ, we like merged with Brother, if you remember that team.
Vaguely, I do remember Brother. Brother had
Yeah.
who was on Brother? It was
Fox, Eye Patch, Fear,
mm,
BCB, Banny. Banny was on it. I played with Banny for a while actually,
yeah, really.
with that roster.
Okay, so that's how,
So
so
we
it merged with that, and that
yeah.
straight out of Comp Q merged with Brother, or it like that became one team.
Yeah, it became one team with Work in Progress.
And
So
this
like we
wasn't, and
just
also
merged.
just to clarify, this wasn't Banny from TF2. Obviously, this was Banny that was on the Outlaws now as a coach for
Yeah,
the Justice,
Coach
correct?
DC, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I was expecting. Did you ever feel, I remember when I was a player in 2016 and I was like looking to compete as well. It was a very similar story, but like it was a wild west, and Dimics are going like crazy. Gosu Gamer ratings determined your entire salary. Back in
Hmm.
the day, like there was like if you did badly on a tournament, like they would just cut your salary in half
Yeah,
because you would
it was
lose your
crazy.
points. Um, you would completely lose like you would literally just lose so much money. Uh, did you ever think at any point, like I remember what was really evident for us in Bird Noises at times is like some of these sponsored teams really suck. You know, like they really suck, and like how are they making money? And I think the one that was like a most apparent to me at the time was CLG when they announced what used to be it had like miso on it, and I can't remember what they were called, but they were like 20th in an A at the time, and they got picked
Yeah,
up for
and they got
CLG.
signed. Yeah,
Yeah,
dude, it was wild back then. Like random teams that were just like perceived as like they're not very good, and then they all get picked up.
the
I
1%.
mean,
Yeah, that was the name.
yeah, but it's like back then. It's like I think the level of Overwatch was pretty bad, so it was kind of hard to tell like who was really good or who was
Hmm.
really bad.
So you think
Um,
it was mainly just? I mean, because also leading into that, it was like, so straight out of Comp was sort of a continuation of WIP, right? When you were competing in early Overwatch and you were playing, then is like, do you felt like as you merged with Brother and you got closer to 2018, as like a player back in those days compared to a player now, are those connections? Did you think? Because I feel like back then, like I wouldn't have been on Bird Noises. Like my first team was Huckleberry, you know, and that was like Mela and Pharaoh and the
oh,
Fragile, like old TF2 guys,
yeah,
and then Node at one point once we got him later, and even Alpha, if you remember Alpha. Alpha was on that team
Alpha.
at one
Yeah,
point.
I think I do.
Yeah, disaster of a decision, by the way, an absolute disaster of a decision to have that man on a team, but I felt like without those connections, and then like as uh, going into Bird Noises when Verbo left for Immortals, and then Bird Noises with Super and Jake, they reach out to me. It was like, hey, do you want to play Lucio? I felt like those connections, without those, like obviously you have to still be good enough to like get them in the first place and be a known name, you know. But without them, I probably wouldn't have gone where I am today. And do you think it's like less important or would be more important in Overwatch League than it was back then to just sort of have those connections? Because a lot of people say like connections are still the most valuable thing you can have in any profession. Do you think Overwatch League has lessened that, or is it more of players now are a lot more represented by their performance?
I think back then definitely connections mattered a lot, and skill wasn't like it was kind of hard to determine who was really good, who was really bad, like I said. So I think connections really helped, and back then I didn't really have any at all because I kind of stuck with this roster because like they were my friends. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that was like one of my biggest mistakes was just like sticking with the same people for a very long time when I could have like played with other teams, got better. I mean, I didn't regret it, but definitely I could have, expanded my ventures a little bit more.
That's
But
true.
I think in current Overwatch, skill does have a big play in it, but I think connections still are very important.
Do you still think it's like, because a lot of people say like, I mean the most obvious example is, if we take a contemporary example, is Chipsa, which I don't really think is a great example
Yeah.
necessarily. There was other reasons involved, like a stream presence and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, but I feel like a lot of people say like, oh, they just knew this guy. In fact, going into season 1 of Overwatch League, because I imagine, did you at the time for season 1, were you getting tryouts for Overwatch League in season 1, or was it not until season 2 after playing with Legion?
I wasn't getting
So it
tryouts
was more
season
after
one.
season
It
2.
was after Legion, yeah.
Yeah, or
It was
after
season
season
three.
1, I should
Season
say.
two, season three, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So for even in season 1, everyone was like, oh, these guys just have the connections. Like they're getting tryouts because they just know these people. But I feel like for Overwatch League, it has flattened that curve a lot and changed how, if you're a good player, like, I mean, if we're being on, because let's take for example, you like your performance, not your performance in particular, but your team performance, Boston, was abysmal. Like it
Hmm.
was really, really bad in season
Yeah.
2, but you still have made your way to the Outlaws. And I feel like, and we've seen examples like that happen where also really good players like Bumper on the Titans, who had a great season and was fantastic and had previous history, is now not even on a team. So I feel like Overwatch League has really made it far less connection based than it used to be, and a lot more, skill based, or maybe even just timing based, because it makes weird. It's kind of weird if you think about it, how Bumper is not on a team,
Hmm.
but other players who had have potential like yourself, but had poor performances like with their teams the original season, are now on a team.
Yeah, I definitely think like just performances and scrims and internally with like your own team, like especially like say like you like perform well with Boston, everyone likes you, and then like the coaches then get like they leave, and then they're like, oh, Boston's pretty good, or just like doing good in scrims in general too. Like other teams take notice of that, so it's good to always like try really hard in scrims
So you
just
think
to get
that the scrim
noticed.
environment is like is for this comparatively to pre Overwatch League, where there's a lot more connection based. Scrim environment is, especially for tryouts, you think is a lot more important for how teams are selecting their players now, because it's a lot more about the personality and the fit and their performance within that tryout block than it used to be?
Yeah, I think tryouts are good for, somewhat unknown players and also just to test the player you want to see that you've like maybe scrimmed against in Overwatch League. Like I think once you're in Overwatch League, it's like such a good opportunity to just like I took the deal with Boston because like I didn't really have a choice. I mean, I could have like waited and I potentially could have gone like DC maybe.
Yes,
But
I remember those stories. I remember the times.
yeah, yeah. But I decided, just screw it, just go to Boston and then, perform well in scrims, perform because like other like teams take stats and stuff. Like they watch back VODs, they see you, take notice of you. So I think just I don't regret going to Boston. It just, it could have been better, but I think I performed pretty well
So you think it
internally
was the
as
right,
for
because that's like an age-old debate, right? And it's one that even I've had with myself because I was on Boston as well,
yeah.
notoriously, to not play any games. And this was after a long, stint of pre-Overwatch League. I was trying, contenders teams like academy teams reached out to me and was like, hey, do you want to play? But Boston was like, no, 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 like don't worry, like we really want you, like you're so close to getting in, right? And I debated the merits of like Overwatch League versus contenders. And do you think that, looking at yourself now where you're at, that for a lot of players, because it's still an ongoing debate. I had players come to me from other teams this season and be like, yo, should I take this contract or should I just sit another season in contenders? And I know coaches that also it's the same dilemma. It's like, do you think if you use your opportunities the right way, where like you meet people, you talk to people, you try your best, that taking the Overwatch League contract will always generally result in a better overall result for you? Or is it sometimes better to just wait and just not take a contract if it isn't to your liking and it's on a team that you generally think won't treat you well or won't promote you well?
I think it depends on the person, right? Because like if you're not willing to like go out and like connect, like once you're in Overwatch, like so you're in Boston and like you have to like perform well, make connections, talk to people, try your best to just like be known. And then I think maybe, you could try to wait it out. Obviously, hindsight, like I probably should have waited out because like, I could have gotten a better team, but I wouldn't have like ever known that. So, taking the deal with Boston probably the best bet.
I mean, but we'll lead into that thinking about getting a better team. Do you think
Mhm.
you really would have, considering that? So Legion was your next team after 2017, and on Legion, they had Panker. It was like Rolf, Pooks. I think you had Gods, right?
Corey, yeah.
And Corey. But if you think about it, at that time for Boston last year, you took a deal for Boston and Corey took the deal for Justice, right? So do you really think it would have been a better team in that scenario? Because Corey would have gone to Justice, right? And who knows who else the team might have changed at that point. But then you would have had like a different DPS partner. I mean, they brought in Dalton and Farr after
Yeah.
that. And I'm wondering if like, do you think still, even with the loss of Corey, right? Let's say Corey took that contract and you didn't, you would have been in a better position?
On Legion,
Yeah, on Legion.
um,
And also just in general, right? Because we just talked about how
yeah, yeah.
taking the Overwatch League contract can sometimes, even if it's not for a great team, can be better for you if you play it right versus staying in contenders and looking for a better option.
I mean, yeah. So right after like the whole ordeal, like I went to Boston, Corey went to DC, like Goats Meta started getting really popular. So I think if I did stayed, if I wasn't already known within like people who want to get me in Overwatch League, then it's kind of hard to show off in contenders because
Mm-hmm.
especially contenders is kind of dying, like viewership is getting lower, and also it's Goats, and I'd be on Brig, right? So like it's hard to like scout a player when they're just playing Brig, like for like maybe like a whole year in
Yes,
contenders.
very true.
So yeah,
So you felt like that can goats, especially for the last year, really changed, like would have changed your opportunities. But you didn't know about goats beforehand though,
yeah, I
getting
didn't
that
know. Yeah,
contract,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it wouldn't have been possible for you to know. But you're saying that if it did happen, goats would have potentially changed everything with, because how do you stand out as a Brigida player in contenders? It's not that it's impossible. You can. We saw good Brigidas in
Mm.
contenders, but it's definitely,
It's insanely hard, I think.
yeah, it's a tough one. And also, especially with goats and contenders in general, and let's say you had lost Corey, right? Though granted, I would say, and I think Corey himself would admit this, Cesario was not the best last year. He's definitely much more of an actual DPS player than a tank player.
Hmm.
Um, it might have been tough because Goats was so team reliant that you would have potentially had a worse team. And then if you were on Brigida duty watching your team die around you, Or like
Yeah.
2016 Lucio, where you're just an aura bot and you're just sitting there watching your team die, then it's really tough to get scouted and tough to see like where it is. So bottom line, you think it was just a better move in general? Like as your conclusive answer, it's a better move in general for most players, you feel, to just take the contract and just try to work around it, even if it's not ideal.
Yeah, even if it's not an ideal Overwatch League contract, I think just taking it is just worth in the long run, eventually.
Yeah, because it's been a hotly debated issue
Yeah.
for a lot of people and a lot of teams, and it reaches out to coaches and stuff as well. Well, I guess then that something that's also, I think, for Legion is that it was one of the academy teams that existed for a while. It lasted for a year. I think a little over a year, actually, because it was competing last year, too. So really about 2 years. And it's gone now. They've disbanded for the time being. They might be coming back after, and they had not a great past season as well. Do you think comparatively to contenders when you were in it, because you were in there for a year, for all that year before 2019, to contenders this year with the format changes and with academy changes, because a lot of academy teams as well, like example, Envy or Atlanta Academy even, or teams that were paying very good money, realize that you're not getting return on investment, but instead of just cutting the programs, you just reduce the overall like salary amounts, but you still provide housing and a structure for them, and it's still worth it to run the academy team if you pick the right players versus just paying them a lot of money. But I feel like there's a lot less opportunities for players in general now. Is it harder, do you think, for contenders players now to get in versus what it was when you were in, or do you think it was actually easier or about the same?
I think it's a little harder right now because talent is getting, trimmed in Overwatch League, I believe. Like as the years go on, like quote unquote bad players will eventually, leave. And I think just in general, it's like harder to get in because like the skill cap has gone higher. What people are looking for, it's like you have to be like mechanically good and like a good teammate and be able to calm. Uh, yeah, I think in general it's gonna be harder after each year.
And you think so it's really not even just a matter of like availability. You think that no matter what, it's going to be harder simply because everyone's getting better.
Yeah, I think so.
That's fair. And do you think, and also another example I think is important to talk about contenders versus Overwatch League now is, so your coaches for when you were on Legion at the time were Raptors, I believe, and I don't think Made was a part of it yet when you were there.
No, it was just Raptors.
Just Raptors, right? Yeah, and I
Yeah.
talked to Raptors a couple times. And so we've also seen a lot of good staff from contenders move up to Overwatch League since then that were sort of there, because in season one, like, there was only X amount of spots. And if you weren't in, that's sort of just unlucky because there was a lot of competition for spots, which does beg the reason of, like, how Shanghai or Mayhem existed for that season, considering how competitive it was to get in. But that's besides the point. The point is that you think that are contenders teams even setting up players for success like they used to? Do you think that your time on Legion actually set you up for success, or was a lot more player driven, like your individual improvement and working towards your goals as teams scouted you, coming in there as Boston scouted you after that? Do you feel like it was a lot more player driven, or it was just way more, there was actually organizational success and steps for those players at the time that aren't, and do they exist now versus do they exist at all? Like, are they gone? Have they gotten better?
Okay. So the season, like I like went to Legion, like the contracts were like really nice. You get like most people got paid like what 3K a month.
Yeah, around 2 to 3 with housing and
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
with housing, and it was like actually a really nice gig, especially on Legion. Legion was good in terms of just like org support. Um, I think nowadays after that season, I heard like people's like pay got dropped to like 1.5K
Yeah, that's like for if you're
or
on a
even
good
less.
academy team.
Yeah, if you're good,
If
if
you're
you're
on
on
a
a
good
good
academy
team,
team now, it's like half, and then
if it's like half.
if you're even getting that, but you still do get housing in the organizational structure. So
Yeah. I mean, most don't even get housing now, I think. Right?
Envy gets housing.
Envy. Atlanta,
Uh,
maybe.
Atlanta might give them. It might have some sort of situation. Fusion Uni or Tier 1 T1 gets housing in Korea, I think. And then like
So
different
only,
team,
like-
Uprising Academy still has a team house in Toronto as well that they've used. I think
Okay.
it's still there, but also Uprising Academy has like not even close to comparable salaries to what the salaries we just
Yeah, I
listed.
mean, yeah, let's be real.
Yeah, it was. It's been that way for a long time. So it's pretty like very different, I would say. But also I think that's like the ideal route for contenders, honestly, because like I remember I was talking to Valiant about this. It was before, it might have been Packing, or it was before Actually, it was before Packing. I can't remember who on Valiant at this point. It was a Valiant or a member of the organization, and it could have been like their GM. I can't remember, but they were like, yeah, it's just not. It's not worth the investment for us to run contenders, you know. But I'm like, but you are wanting to pay them like 2,000 to 3,000 a month with housing. Like obviously, you're not going to get your return back. Like there's no way. Like there's
no
literally
way, yeah.
zero way that's going to happen for the most part. And in an ideal system, you know, you do have a very good safety net there. But you do have a good system, a robust system for tier 2, but the reality is this is not how it is right now, and it's so you can always just reduce like, you know, like the salaries in half to like 1.5, right? But still provide housing, and that's still a great setup to be in if you're a contenders player, because you're part of an organization. Ideally, if your Overwatch League team is involved in giving them development, you have that. You also have the stability for a housing, because when you don't have to pay housing, that's like the majority of your living costs for a year, like taken care of. You know, and sure, you're not making a lot of money overall from that if you're like at 1.5, but it's fine in terms of like everything else. And also, a lot of these kids are young, like they're like 16 to 18, or you know, early, maybe or very early 20s. So for pursuing something like this, it's really not the worst gig, and it's better to have, I feel, more contenders teams that are paying something versus no contenders teams and some that pay a lot.
Yeah.
In general, so I feel like that's a lot better setup. So you think that it is overall like the orgs were setting up players for success better than they were now? Because I feel like they've shifted in contenders. Like, you know, for example, obviously I have a lot of firsthand knowledge into Envy, and it seems like they've adjusted and they're still trying to give a lot of that support, and they've changed their system to just move players up as quickly as possible versus developing them, you know, and having them stew in contenders for a bit with those resources. Or do you think now they're just definitely not getting the same level of help from coaches or from org that they were at your time?
I think it's case by case, like depending on like how many contender teams there are right now. Like, I think only like the top 4 teams are like being really supported. Um, I mean, it's also weird because like it's like that one year of the contenders for me was like really good, you know, and then I went to Overwatch League, and then the second year I heard it was like really weird in contenders, like things went downhill a lot. I guess now we got a little better, but it was like it did like digress, I think, overall.
Okay. So definitely just not the same level of support.
Yeah. But I think most orgs like Atlanta, like Philly, just like or at least Atlanta to like I think they just like have contenders team just to like have a B team almost. It's like a cheaper like way to have like a really good B team.
Mm-hmm.
Because Atlanta Academy before they like got picked up to Owl, most of them it was like a really good contenders. So I think it's like a really good B team.
Yeah, I think the B team system is a pretty good system for being able to set it up. Well, I guess now that we've gone through contenders here, we can get to the real meat and potatoes of the important stuff, because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, even as I say this, I imagine people were tuning out because we talked about contenders, and no one wants to
Yeah,
even listen
no
to
one
it.
wants to know. Yeah,
No one even wants to
no one
listen to
cares.
it. So for Overwatch League for 2019, so you said that Boston was, you know, probably, would you say that it was like your only option moving into that year? Like there wasn't really a lot for you in terms of like Overwatch League prospects for that year?
Yeah, I almost like got an offer from Valiant, but that I think that like just fell through. So I think yeah, Boston was like pretty much my only choice.
Mm-hmm. And then we talked about, you know, the discussion that we had between do we take the contract, do we not? But it's obviously it's worked out for you, and you say that, you know, it's worked out for that. But for someone that was, you know, seen the environment before, and it was much the same environment that, besides the roster, obviously, that I was in for season 1. When you came into that season, and you know, you guys went 8-20 during the regular season for Boston for 2019, and there didn't seem to be a lot of progression, and there was people leaving. Do you think when you took that offer and you sat in there, were you like, oh shit, like this is a problem? Like
I'm gonna start like losing every game or something. Like
no,
what
more
if
of
it,
like not even just losing every game, but more like, you know, you talk about your longevity of your career, and you're like, and Boston's doing so terribly throughout the season, and you're getting role swapped constantly. Like you weren't even playing your role.
yeah.
When you came in, which wasn't like, part of it was meta, then, you know, part of it was just weird stuff happening. do you feel that it was like a doomsday moment for you of like as a player, like you have to feel like I feel like it would be like, oh man, like what am I gonna do? Like who's gonna want me?
I actually didn't think so because, like I said, I actually thought like I know that like I performed really well in scrims and like in matches, most of the matches, that I wasn't role swapped, but I think that like, cause like I knew like like other teams wanted me like throughout the season like around stage three, um, and even in stage four I was like it's I just want to get the season over at this point, I was just done with Boston. It's gonna trash there in terms of just like coaching and just overall stability of like our roster. It was just like all over the place. Like we had like a really good start of the season. Like stage one and two, like it was pretty good. Like we played goats well, and then Note got traded, and I think that did a big blow to us internally for the players. Like some of the players actually boomed. Like, I'm not gonna say who, but it was pretty bad after Note got traded.
So you felt so Note being traded, and I haven't really talked to him about this yet. Actually, but I mean I've heard his thoughts on it, but I haven't really in depth. So was Note being traded more of a unilateral decision, do you think, or was it Note pushing for that?
It was kind of random, to be honest. Like,
Random.
Yeah, Huck just kind of, I don't know. They just, I don't know. It was really, in my like opinion, it was like a stupid decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they like regret that decision, but it's just like such a, almost like a worthless trade because you're not getting anything out of it at all. Like, I'm not saying RCK is bad, but it's like, they're like almost like the same player, like to like a point. So it's like, what's the point of like doing this trade and just ruining synergy and ruining players' mentalities, other player mentalities for like I don't know. I don't know what the trade was for, to be honest.
So there was just like out of left field for the players on Boston. You didn't expect this coming. There was no talk about it from the team. Now, I mean,
No, no,
I
yeah,
they
dude,
generally don't talk about those sort of
they
things.
never talk to you to the players. Like if they want to trade someone, they just trade you. They don't talk to you about it.
Yeah, that lines up with some of the previous experience. But you feel like it would be weird though when you thought about it because the RCK note trade I felt was from the outside, right, was good on paper because you're like, okay, you're getting RCK, he's been performing pretty decently well and has shown some flexibility on DPS,
Yeah.
and you're probably getting money in return more than likely. I've been told I believe that Boston. I think they actually no. Actually, I think Boston
I don't.
paying. Boston paid actually.
Yeah,
I
they
believe
paid. They lost.
they
They lost
paid. They
money.
lost money.
Actually,
Yes, that's
yeah,
right.
they lost money.
They
I
lost
know.
money
Yeah,
on
they
that.
did it for sure.
Um, and so you change that up, and then on paper, like, okay, this will give Boston some interesting flexibility. But then you say from the inside, Note was crucial. You felt to the team's chemistry at the time.
Yeah, to the former Boston players, I think like from season one, like it was pretty crucial. Like Helix, Imgod, uh, whoever was still on the roster from season one.
I think
It
Gamsu
was
had
like
been traded
crucial.
by that point, so I don't think it was
Yeah,
Gamsu.
Gamsu was traded, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty crucial. Also, with Gamsu, he didn't want to leave either, actually.
Yeah, I remember having talks with him in the end of season one. It seemed like he was like on the fence about stuff, but so you would think that you think they also just traded Gamsu without really consulting him that much either. Like it was just sort of out left field too. Did you ever talk to him about that, or is it just sort of like
Yeah,
who
I
knows?
remember. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was also out of left field, and I did think like Gamsu wanted to stay. Like, yeah, it was weird. I don't know. The trades that were made between like stage one and two were just a mess, I think.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that tied in directly was for to like your season that season and how things went down? Do you felt that the org was a lot? Do you think it was a mixture between like what as a player when you're sitting there playing and you see the team environment, because also Boston's team environment season one when I was there towards the end, I was a fly on the wall the entire time, right? And I just saw a team stage four just plunge, like lose its mental, boom out of control. Like I've never seen a team boom before. It was legendary, the stories that were told about how bad the boomings were on stage four Boston season
Yeah,
one.
I heard some stories from the former
Yeah,
Boston players. Yeah.
it was a truly interesting experience. And do you think that the mental aspect for Boston through the season you were on for season two for 2019, and was a direct result of like player attitudes? Was it the org's management of it and like your staff, or was it just sort of everything mixed into one, and that was what really helped lead Boston to that really terrible season last season?
I think it's everything mixed. Just from decisions made in the higher ups, and then just our players' attitude that just like kind of plunged after trades happened. And I don't know, they're just like a negative perception in Boston, like ever since season one, that like once you're on the team, like people's mentalities are kind of different. They're like, oh, I'm on Boston. It's like it's it's weird. Uh yeah, yeah. I don't know how to explain it.
So it's just that atmosphere of being on Boston, almost like you're here and you're like, just like, did you feel that attitude of like, "Ugh, I'm on Boston, dude? Like, was that the attitude that you would say is like, I'm stuck
I,
on Boston, I'm trying to get out, or is it like
Obviously, I
sadness?
didn't. I didn't think like that. At the beginning of like stage one and two, like I wanted to try really hard. It's my first, my debut in Overwatch, like right. So I want to try really hard. But then eventually, like like when stuff happens and you're like, wow, this is such a Boston thing to happen, and then you're like, wow, I'm on Boston. That's when you realize, oh, I'm on
It hits you
Boston,
like a
bro.
truck. You're just like,
Yeah, it hits you like a truck.
the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
president of
You're just
gaming
like,
is my
oh,
boss.
bro. Yeah.
Mm. So it's sort of that build up towards like something until something really uprising happens, and then you're just like, damn, this is the moment that I realize that I'm
It's like
here.
I'm on Boston, bro. It's like,
Oh man. And so do you think that was like a cumulative effect throughout the season for you guys in season 2, or is it just ongoing the entire time, or is it just like a peak and a drop, a peak and a drop, or like was it just the entire time I'm on Boston, like, or is it
it
just
was
key
like
moments?
it was key moments. Like it was just like stage one and two. I like it felt fine. When it was on the team, everything felt fine. Like it was like, oh, we lost. It's like, okay, whatever, we'll work on it. And we're doing good strats. Working on our problems. Then he got traded, and that's when like that's one key moment. It's like, oh, okay, well he just got traded out of nowhere, and then everyone boomed, and it's like, oh, that's a Boston moment right there.
That's a Boston moment right
That's
there. There it is.
everyone
Boston
booming.
moment
There it
TM.
is.
Boston moment TM. We have boomed simultaneously at the same time with the
Yeah.
note trade. And well, that's. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not surprised, honestly.
Yeah,
But I do
dude, I
think
don't
it's
think anyone was
incredible.
surprised.
I think it
Yeah.
is incredible because it's just a lead-in of that attitude that I think was happening at the end of Stage 4 Season 1, and it just never got fixed. And then they started just randomly doing the swaps, where you felt as a player randomly doing swaps and trades, and it just completely devolved. In addition to that, when we're talking about this boom that's going on, why, and the trades that happened, why are you just the unluckiest player in Overwatch League, where you've had 2 different years in a row, both of your first 2 years in Overwatch League, that you haven't gotten to play your role initially? Like, you had to play Hog, and it was Brigida, right? Also, you
Yeah,
played
it was
Hog and
Brig,
Brigida. You
and
played
then I played
Zarya, right?
Hog. I played Zarya for one match because we were like we wanted to try something different because we were like we're not winning anyways, so it's like might as well try something. Like we don't know what to do anymore.
So that swap was a panic swap, really.
That it was a band-aid fix that we just wanted to do. So and I was like, all right, it wasn't worth it. Might as well just put me back on Brig and just keep being good at that. And
Oh yeah, you played Diva as well. That's right.
yeah, I played Diva in stage 4. It was originally Hog. Okay, so originally I wanted to play Hog because if the meta felt like it was Orisa Hog meta, and I had a pretty good Hog, and then it started shifting to Orisa Diva with I think Reaper May, Lucio Moira or something. And when it shifted to that, they were like, oh, I'm on Diva. It's like I kind of have to play Diva at that point, so I just started to only play Diva. And I mean, one of the reasons why like I got swapped was like RCK was kind of underperforming. I don't hate him, just he was underperforming. I'm just gonna say how it is.
And so you don't think it wasn't really involved to the eye infection as much? It wasn't.
Yeah, it
performing
was
up to
like
par?
that and like performance. Like I wouldn't say the eye injury was like the main part. Like just he had like internal issues to himself.
I think your webcam froze.
Hello?
Yeah, you're still talking. I can hear your audio, but your webcam froze. Oh, you're back.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that was weird.
The heck? I think I kicked my Ethernet cord for like a second.
Yeah, well that's fine. So it was a lot of they were making these swaps for Boston because it wasn't due to those health reasons. It was just they weren't getting the results they wanted, and so they felt
just band-aid fixes. Yeah, like they
fixes.
just wanted to use me as like a multi-tool to see if it works.
Do you think that has defined you, like as a player? As a player, have you been defined because you played McCree in the beginning for Outlaws, and like obviously, and I think you would admit this, you're not a McCree player. You can play it in ranked, right?
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
when you're playing against like Nene and Carpe and stuff like that. Like you're just not gonna have the same level of McCree because it's not the hero that in the class, hit scan that you've really been playing throughout your career. Did it really end up that same way for Houston, where it was just a band-aid fix at the time, and it was just what was necessary, and you were probably the most flexible, and you had the right attitude to fit in?
Yeah, so me and my crew were just like, yeah, also a band-aid fix. Because at the time, Jury wasn't in a good mental state, so I like basically just filled the McCrew role
Mm-hmm.
and just played it. And I wasn't doing like that bad in scrims, but like I think when I didn't feel this pressure before until like I played on stage as a hitscan player, and like the pressure on a different role, like especially like hitscan, is like so much different than like CPS that I just wasn't used to it, and I just like kind of like sort of collapsed a little bit.
You
I just
had
wasn't
a
comfortable
mood of
enough.
your own. It was just it
Yeah.
was uncomfortable. Was it? Did you feel it was because of like your role as a hit scan player, or was it just the
I
mechanics, or
think
just everything combined?
it wasn't mechanics. It was more so. As a player, I calm a lot, right? And I don't think hitscan is a role, especially McCree, where you can talk a lot. Like hitscan players, like most hitscan players don't talk a lot because they have to really focus on their positioning, their aim, the flanks, what's happening, what's their McCree doing. And I calm too much. I try to carry comms too much. So yeah, I just don't think hitscan was like the right
I
role
mean,
for
I've
me at
heard
all.
that statement before from other players. Actually from Jake, which is why the narrative is so funny that Jake was such an important caller for Houston when he was playing for them. Was that Jake always talked about, and he had these complaints with bird noises and LGE as well. Was that being a DPS player, but especially if you're playing hit scan and trying to be very comm heavy, is really tough because you're so focused on telling your team what to do when there's a million things going on
That
in
I
the
have to like
game
focus on. Yeah,
that you're not focusing on your mechanics, you're not focusing on your positioning, and like hit scan in particular, especially with when the meta you're playing, when D.Va's very strong and like is coming for you all the time. I feel like you could just get punished extremely heavily because you're so focused on leading your team. And do you think that was an experience that you felt with Houston?
yeah, it was definitely just really hard. Like, cause like not only did you like if you gotta focus on D.Va, there's also like in the McCree meta, like you had to focus on marking their McCree too, because both McCrees like played the flank. So like you had to really focus on like what their McCree was doing too.
And so just like being overwhelmed with all that information and trying to tell your team how to play was just an impossible task when you're already on a role that wasn't your role. Like when you
Yeah.
put everything combined, and that was a big reason you would say that you were playing at the time was Adam McCree was just not only was Jury just not able to play, but they needed your leadership, or was that just secondary?
They wanted my decision making and comms in general, and I don't think McCree was the right role to do it on.
Did you think that that was a similar situation for Boston too last year, that they needed your leadership? Do you think losing Note they had to fall back on you a lot more, which is why we saw you filling in for roles, or was
Um,
that just entirely separate because of the RCK scenario?
okay, so that's like a different situation because so during stage 1 and 2, Fusions really carried the comms because he was really good at goats. Because like no one else in Overwatch had played goats, right? But Fusions had like a bountiful like wealth of experience in goats in EU, and he kind of carried us in stage 1 and 2. But like during stage 3 and stage 4, like strategies and goats got more complicated, and I started to understand those strategies. And I don't think Fusions. I wouldn't say he didn't get them, but I think we were just doing like the same plays, like oh push in, push in, push in, push in. Like it wasn't like very strategic. I think.
Yeah, I think that was a theme that you guys had, was that it wasn't. It was sort of the same situation we saw with like Cruz for Paris earlier in the year too, where it was like, okay, I'm aggressively booping, give me the bubble, I'm aggressively booping, I'm doing it every time, and
Yeah,
you get found out really fast. And I feel like that was like definitely something you saw with you guys too at Fusions, is that it was a very similar playstyle every single time.
yeah. Goats got really complicated in stage 3, and I think I like had a better grasp of it. So I like ended up the coaches wanted me to start like picking up comms more, like being the main caller, track like just micro and macro. Um, I mean Fusion is still a great caller. Don't get me wrong. He's a very vocal person, and I think it's very valuable in a main tank. But we just like had me to calm more since
Mm-hmm.
also playing Brig, you don't have to do much. So calming on her was like really easy.
But then moving into the off tank stuff, that was still separate. That was just they needed someone to band aid fix
Yeah, that that
SDK.
was that that was just separate. Yeah.
Okay. because and then so I just felt like it was a very unlucky narrative for you for that to happen essentially twice in such a short time frame because you did Boston and then stage 4 Boston in particular and then get the season 3 for Houston and you're back on playing McCree, which is not your role. And so I just felt like that's if you were as someone looking in, like as a player, like what was your thoughts on that? Did you feel that like as other players should be worried about situations like that? Should they be willing to accept the challenge? Was it like a mental thing, like, okay, I just got to do what I got to do, and this is like the best way to do it? Or maybe as a player, you should have stepped in and said, no, I don't want to play this role because it will hurt my stock. It will hurt the team.
I just wanted to, help the team any way I can. So I was like more willing to do stuff like that, like 'cause I thought, if it's for the team and if he can get a winner at all, then I'd do it. But I think in the long run, now that I've realized it's just not worth it to like swap roles like that unless you have like a really good team, like you're like on Philly or something.
Okay, so you
I
think
think
that they shouldn't be swapping, that most DPS players or players in general shouldn't swap their roles if the team asks
yeah,
them if
if they need
possible?
it, yeah, I think you should stick to your role and just be really good at it. And yeah, I don't think it's worth it in the long run.
Okay. Okay. But I mean, luckily for you, it did work out. You made it through, and now you're at I would say in many ways, a new era for Houston. You started winning. You had two very solid wins between Terrace and Defiant. Um, After what many considered just some really really bad performances beginning, and obviously we
Yeah.
talked about like your McCree is part of that, which is completely fair. Like it's not your role, but then you get to play Doom and you get to play your heroes you're actually used to playing, and you pop off like you roll kids, and which is something that we've been hearing for a long time is how good you were at those heroes, and then everyone said like, oh, Blasé Doom, like it's gonna pound, it's gonna be incredible, and like now we finally get to see it. What has changed between when you guys were looking really bad, obviously, but obviously you were on McCree, and now? Like, what is the direct? Is it something in the direction of how Harsh and Dream have been leading you guys? Is it a player attitude thing? Is it hero pools? Like, what exactly
Uh,
has changed for you guys within the team?
so before the Spitfire and Toronto matches that week, after I think who did we lose to? Was it Boston? I think it was the Boston loss. I was like really fed up. I was like, all right, we need to like play to our strengths. Like I think Linkster should be playing on hitscan. He's that's his hero pool, right? He should be playing the McCree, he should be playing the Widow. Shouldn't be me. So like I really emphasized with the coaching staff. I think everyone did. It was just like, yeah, we should just play to our strengths. Play, Linkster on hitscans, and we did a lot better. And then play me on like comps like Doom Sombra. Like we saw like Toronto were doing these comps, and we're like, why can't we do that? Like play it on Horizon, play it on Dorado. We did that, worked out really well. And the thing is, we didn't really have any like preset like I think strategies for Hackfist. It was just like extremely natural for all 6 players that were in at the time playing that comp. It just felt extremely natural. Like we just like played off each other really well, and it worked out.
So you think that for you guys, the biggest shift was just settling down. So it wasn't necessarily like, was it like a two-sided decision or a one-sided decision? Just say, guys, we need to play what we're good at. Like we just need to play something that's going to work for us better, or at least something different that might feel more natural to us. Was it like
It was just
both team like part like the coaches and the players coming together saying this is what we need to do, or is it just one side? Was it you like?
no, it wasn't just me. I was like all the players like just talking to the coaches like
Mm-hmm.
we shouldn't like leave Jiri in the dust. Like we need to help him like get his mental back, and then he's like really good at hitscan. Like seriously, he's like insane at hitscan. So we should play him.
So it was just that collaborative decision, and I can hear Monty laughing from the ether right now because this is something he was talking about with Outlaws last year, and we might have him on. I know Monty is chuckling in the ether somewhere about this situation currently, though it's not really the same Houston that it was before necessarily, though it has a lot of the same core. But well, that's good. I think everyone's also glad for that too. I was glad for you guys as you started doing that. Do you
Yeah,
think that? Oh wait, go on. I'm sorry.
it just feels like a different team now. Like we have like a clear vision of what we want to do. It's just like way more synergistic. I think everyone's like way happier. Everyone like feels like they're playing their correct roles. Everyone like it feels like a team. And I'm just glad that it's gone. Like we've
So,
just been getting better like
okay.
every match, which I'm proud of.
So the attitude has been improving, you think, all around. So the attitude, I imagine, the morale was pretty low before this. And then when you made this swap, you felt like you're a lot better. You're working together finally, and like everyone is happier too. Because also that's the same thing. I'm sure you saw it in Boston. I've seen it in Boston when I was there, and I saw it in other teams. Is that when you're doing really, really badly and getting repeatedly pummeled into the dirt, like every time, your mental is low, and no one wants to interact with each other really, or like do stuff. They don't want to be. It's like you almost stop functioning as friends outside the game too, because everyone's just so
Depressed.
depressed with
Yeah.
everything. Yeah, exactly. Like you're so done with that. It was like, so you would say Houston was very similar to that before, and now it's like everyone is much more synergistic and actually happy and hanging out and doing things together.
Yeah. I mean, we did things together beforehand, but just like in terms of like team synergy, just like playing as a team, I think it wasn't like quite there.
Mhm.
But now it's just like it feels way more natural.
That's good. And do you think, when you talked about how it felt natural for you to play Hackfist, and also now that Linkster is back on McCree and playing around, the Linkster on HitScan, did you feel like when you talk about that natural feeling in game as like a player, so there wasn't really a set plays, it was just the coaches knew you practice the comp through the week, and you probably talk about refinements, right? Like what not to do in this situation, like sort of how you want to
Yeah,
take some
yeah.
general pushes in ult economy. But so during the game when you're on that natural comp, you didn't feel that there was a lot of like set plays being done. It was you guys just understanding how to play those heroes within the comp.
Yeah, we just understood like the comp really well. Just playing against, comps like Reaper May, Ryan, it's like I don't think those comps really counter Doomfist and Sombra.
Mm-hmm.
It just and we just like understood how to play against it. I don't know. It was weird. Like in the match, like everything's like feels so natural in match. It's just I don't know how to explain it. Like
No, I
most
get
I
I get
think
what you're going
yeah.
for exactly.
I think like in Overwatch it's like really important to like do what you think is the best, and if you're a good player, it's just like things should come almost naturally most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's definitely that feeling, and I think it's we've gotten to that point at points where like we get very analytical in Overwatch, like especially on like the Reddit and stuff like that. Everyone's like, look at this
Yeah.
sick play, dude. Like we're breaking it down in the in the picosecond of how they made the execution happen and how they made this incredible play. But a lot of times, like for teams that are just incredible, it's just they have perfect gel and they know how they're playing their heroes,
Yeah,
and they
it
just
just
have the
almost
ult economy
happens.
down.
Yeah. It's like most of the time it's not like that deep, like most things in Overwatch are not that deep. They're not like doing this like specifically, especially if it's like a really fast play. It's like usually not that complicated. It just kind of happens sometimes.
Yeah, it's just a player seeing the moment and being like, I can hack this person, or I can punch this guy
Yeah.
right here. Like this is the play. And sometimes they just react wrongly too, and they feed. But like
Hmm.
it's really not that many set plays.
Yeah.
I feel so, and that's how you're feeling with Houston right now. Is that everyone's just playing perfectly and knowing their role and knowing how to communicate with each other. That's good. That's good. I'm glad you guys have sort of come into the stride a little bit too, because I think that's like you talked about, the number one most important thing for a team is having that stride as a team and like everyone knowing exactly how they want to play and how to talk to each other. Do you think the coaches have done anything more to facilitate that for you? Has the organization changed around you as your performance has changed, in these coming weeks? Have the coaches then, after we had these talks, been like, okay, we were doing it wrong, so Dream and Harsher, like we just need to facilitate practicing these certain comps and keeping the players in bounds of like general Overwatch, and we don't focus as much on set strategies and like rotations and a lot more on just practice and perfecting basics?
I think especially in hero pools, I think obviously you want to find a comp that really suits your team, and that's also like really good in general. That's quote unquote meta. Um, I think in hero pools, like scrimming the top teams is super valuable because they like figure out like really good comps very quickly. You just kind of copy that sometimes, and you're just like, wow, let's roll with this. And then I think that was the case with Paris. Like we scrimmed like really good team, and then we played sort of Tracer. We're like, wow, this comp is like actually insane. Like, and I'll swap Doom when I can if I feel like it. I think in hero pools it's like way more natural and like your swaps and how you want to play because you can't like really you don't have time to make set plays. It's like only like less than a week before you have like a match, and there's a different hero pool. So in the case of like our Paris match, they were playing like Orisa comps, and Soldier Tracer like dive just like hard destroyed that in my opinion. And they also weren't like really playing Brig, and we were hard abusing Brig. So yeah.
Do you think Brig is going to be like, because it's not banned this week, right? They banned Lucio, and I guess
Oh
also if
yeah, she's gonna be played. I know
she's going
she's
to be
gonna be
played
played.
like a lot. Like you think Brig is just the go-to? Like that's going to be, she's
I
back. You
think
can't
Brig
escape her.
Anna Brig Zen is like insane.
Yeah, we just can't escape Brigida no matter what. She's just always there bashing us no
I
matter what we
definitely
can
think
do.
she's definitely like in a better spot. You know, she's not like a hard carry and like goats where she like once she rallies she's like invincible. I mean, she's kind of still the same way if she rallies, but like I don't know. She definitely feels more balanced.
That's good. Yeah, I agree with you as well. I think it is in a lot more balanced state for Brigida, especially now as a tracer. You can actually kill her. Like you can shoot
Yeah,
her
you can
shield
mid
and she
range her.
can.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you just mid range her and then she just dies.
I think it's a much
It's
better
actually
solution.
really hard to like counter tracer sometimes.
It is. It's definitely a much better spot to be in than back to the unkillable killing machines with all of that. And I think, for you, as you've seen this evolution with Houston, and if you've settled into we should play basic Overwatch and sort of get that synergistic feel versus the set feel. Do you think as a player, as you progress, because also if you think we've had like 4 different metas in Overwatch throughout its release, it's a 4-year-old game, and we've had 4 drastically different things between no hero limit, hero limits, roll lock, and now hero pools. Has it? Do you feel like when we've seen players leave the game, is it more them not adapting to these changes and getting phased out, or is it just they weren't as good but then that head start, or is it a combination of like both? And how like you've progressed from, because you've been since 2016 and here you are in 2020 doing fine in Overwatch League.
Yeah, I think if you're a good player, then you'll adapt to meta to meta. It's just how it is. Like it's Overwatch. You know, you have to have like a pretty good hero pool that's also like has all the heroes that are always going to be good. You know, like dive meta, Genji. You know, or Sombra. Like, you know, having a Doomfist is like good. Like Soldier. I don't know. It's like it's weird. I think you should be able to learn other heroes and play them well if you're in Overwatch League.
So it's a lot of that having that flexibility before
Yeah.
that wasn't. But you would think it was like there would be more flexibility before in a way because we had no hero limits and then 1-1-1 or and then or one of each
Oh yeah.
and then roll lock. Like was it made like what was it more of just what heroes were meta at the time and then people didn't change to adapt with the times, you think, or is it just maybe those players were never that flexible to begin with?
I think like a majority of those players probably just weren't flexible to begin with. Probably like it's weird to say because like I think at the time, say like what was the pre-goats meta? It was 4 tank, you know, back then. Or it was like
No,
Hog,
no. If
Diva.
we're talking about pre-goats, like for Overwatch League goats, before that we had double sniper for a large
Yeah,
part of it.
we had double sniper,
Yeah.
double sniper, and then you just start playing goats. Like it's really weird. It's definitely hard for certain DPS players, I think, especially for hitscan players to go from like playing Widow, playing McCree, playing Tracer to like playing Zarya. Like Zarya's not like a hit scan hero. It's kind of weird in a way. It's kind of like a projectile slash. I mean the beam is kind of like tracking, right? But it's weird.
Yeah. It's also just not about tracking. It's about you have to hit the bubbles properly. Like that's
And
like
bubbles,
probably the
hitting your
most
cool,
important
like
part.
understanding cooldowns a lot instead of like pure aiming. Like Zarya's like a mix of that, like knowing your cooldowns and just also pure aim.
So you think of just these rapid changes, and now to where we're at now, where hopefully we're not going to have another drastic shift in rules this
Who
year.
knows, man?
Yeah, who knows at this
Yeah,
point,
who
right?
knows?
But it is like if you're smart and adaptable, you'll probably make it through. And it's only if you're just not very flexible or you're not just really in that position that you were very reliant on certain mechanics and not so much your overall game sense. I felt that you got phased out while we had
Yeah,
these flexible players staying in.
you just can't think of Overwatch like a straight FPS game, you know? Like I don't like to think of Overwatch as like an FPS game. It's more like like a MOBA hybrid. Just really ability based and certain heroes, yeah, you can aim, but I think overall the game revolves around ults and just abilities in general, like a
Mm-hmm.
lot.
And going back to that topic as you as a player, have you felt from as you've gone from team to team, right? Like, has each team experience been wildly different for you? Do you think it remains mostly consistent? Because a lot of through a long career, particularly as you move forward, you're gonna have vastly different experiences. Like I had a vastly different experience when I went from Huckleberry to Bird Noises to Boston. It's very vast. Do you think Overwatch League has like standardized that experience? Because before with the endemic time, like if you were on CLG or me for LG, it was just player driven. There wasn't orgs, like there wasn't a GM watching your back or coaches making sure you get up in time, knocking on your bedroom and stuff. Like it was you guys getting in a Discord server and just trolling each other, like for like that was what it was.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it depends on the team, right? But do you think your experience have changed drastically and your expectations from Legion to Uprising to Houston, and have they all been vastly different?
I wouldn't say they're vastly different, but they're definitely there's always if it's a different like people, different roster, then it's like it's gonna be different no matter what I think. But I think like experiences aren't that different. I mean, Boston was kind of like a maybe an outlier, maybe I think.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like Houston so far, it's like it's not that bad. It's just chill. I think the experience is like good so far.
So you think the overall like camaraderie between you guys is a lot better this year? Like when you compare the experience between Houston and Boston, do you think that really came down to what players are on what team, or is it more of just entirely the organizational direction and how the coaches handled the team that changed how those teams felt?
Coaches and players in
Mm-hmm.
a bit of the org. Like I think players especially because like you have a bunch like on Boston like I felt like you're like the new guy, right? Like in Overwatch you're a new guy, but you're also like with five other new guys or how many people on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
But on Houston I get to like play with like players that are like have been in Overwatch League for a while, like they're really experienced. So it's just I think it's just way it feels better to because like I think these players like understand me like how I want to play, and these guys are like experienced.
Hmm. Okay, and you don't and so the players definitely play a big role in establishing that culture, not so much the coaches. Like does Harshan Dream or Flame, and obviously we might talk about that a bit, but there was just recent news that Flame has left the
Yeah.
Outlaws. But
There's
let's still talk in past tense there. But like let's say that did they shape that culture for Houston that was very different from Boston, and how Huck and the coaches there, like at the time when you were there, it was like what Gunba and Shake, and Minnie. Um, did you did they shape that culture differently than how Houston shaped that culture, and did that play a big part, or is it really on the players?
so I think in Boston the culture was more player driven because we almost like never really talked to the coaches outside of like in the mornings where you would have like a bit of feedback. Like there was always this like in our house there's like this weird glass wall that separates us and like them.
You have
It
like
was
the
weird.
divider, like this is the
Yeah,
listeners,
yeah, yeah.
this
The,
is the
the
players
coaching
and the
room.
coach.
Yeah, it was weird. The coaching room had like a glass wall that could see us like while we were playing in the house.
Okay,
So
so they just stood
and
behind it and watched, like just like
and
looking at you
watch. Yeah,
guys.
yeah, and like throughout the script, like they talk. Like Gunbo's like really the only one talking to us like during the scrims, and then after the scrim, nothing happens. Like we just like it was just the players like just chilling. And
Just
we were
chilling.
just talking, and like we wouldn't get any like post like scrim feedback. Like it was weird. I don't
Really,
know.
they didn't do post scrim feedback. They do like weekly
Not often.
meetings or something where they
We'd
would
have
go
we'd have
stuff.
like meetings sometimes during the week, but like outside of that, it was just like I don't know. It was weird.
That's a very odd scenario. I mean,
Yeah, it just felt really weird. Like it was like there's always like this glass wall. We just never talked to the coaches, and it's like I don't know. It just felt the vibe was weird. I didn't like it.
that is a very because also when I was there, they felt like there was a lot of emphasis, and also that's something that Huck himself has said is that there's a lot of emphasis on like a very structured practice and like a very structured feel to a team, and like that's very different than most esports and overwatching teams. Is like this is traditional sports. We're the craft group, and like we're gonna do it like hardcore, and we're gonna have discipline and stuff. But when you describe it like that, it doesn't sound like there really was any sort of structure. There wasn't a lot of great structure involved at all with the team.
Yeah, the I don't know. I think it was too structured to a point where like they tried to be a little too strict on how like they wanted to do things, I guess. Like nothing felt natural in Boston. That's the thing. Like it all felt like if you weren't doing the set play, then you just lost. And if you did the set play, then you were just out of ideas. If they like countered it or something, like it's yeah, it was just way too robotic in how they did things.
So very little like of that organic, like I'm making this play. Just the coaches told you this is how we're gonna do it, and you make the
Yeah,
play. And if you don't make the play, you get yelled at. And if you make the play and it fails, then you still lose,
and
right?
nothing happens. Yeah, so it's just like I think in Overwatch especially, you can't do robotic things like that. It's like it's such a natural. There has to be like a natural way to play the game organically, and on Houston we're able to do that now, obviously, but on Boston it just felt incredibly robotic.
That is a very it's it's a weird structure to hear because it's been described as like a very tight structure, and then when you compare it, it's just too tight, but also too loose at times because they're not giving scrim feedback, which you think would be a very consistent trend for coaches to have scrim feedback, like
We
right
just didn't
after.
even we just didn't even like get to like really talk to coaches that much. Like it was just like Gunba most of the time. That was the only person like that really tried to talk to the players.
Mm.
I don't know. That was weird.
So do you think that system has been carried over? You know, when we look at Boston now, they've got a new players yet again, uh, but it seems like they're still having some of the same problems. You think that's just once again when we talk about organizations not setting up people for success? Do you think that's just not a structure that is being handled in a way to make players have a good time over there?
Probably. Like I don't know what they're doing now, but they're probably using some sort of like the same structure, just kind of like somewhat of a robotic. You do this, do that. If it doesn't work, then you're out of ideas. Yeah.
And so you feel like comparatively that so Houston, Harsh and Dream are taking you aside post scrim and telling the guys like, hey, this worked, this didn't work, or do you have like you feel like you're talking to them a lot more with Houston? And like obviously we know that Flame is no longer with you guys, but previously before he left, did you feel Flame was a very active part and like you could talk to him about things, or was it much more reserved and it was like you didn't really view him as like someone you like a temporary, just more of like a boss?
He was just like he's like the GM, right? So, and he didn't really like do much of like the coaching or anything, right? Because I mean that's what GM should be doing. They should
Mm-hmm.
do GM stuff.
Yeah.
But like when you have like internal problems, like with maybe like what like banking info or something, I don't know. Like
Mm-hmm.
you talk to him. But I think with Harsher and Dream, they just like talk to the players way more. It feels natural. It's just overall better, I think. Way better compared to Boston.
And I think we're getting close to the time, but I think this has been really good overall. So final few questions on the board here. The lightning round is, you view how Overwatch has changed now with the meta changes with developers and the rule sets, and now going from endemic to Overwatch League. Do you think your career would have been the same? Like, would you be in the same position right now if they had implemented from the beginning like a role lock or a hero rules, do you think? Or do you think your development as a player was very contingent upon that early Overwatch and having the craziness of 6 divas stalling Hanamura last?
I mean, I never played that meta where or
Really?
that part of the game where it was like it was a closed beta, right? That happened where like you could play as many heroes as you want,
Mm-hmm.
or yeah. It was so long ago, but
But pretty much, I mean, guaranteed no matter what, you played with at least when they implemented hero limits of like one per hero, you know?
yeah, one per hero, yeah,
Yeah, so
definitely.
for very least you played with that. And so do you feel like if it had been from the beginning, like let's say the experiences a new players getting now, we have 15-year-old like Rhino, the tank prodigy, or the little kid on that plays main tank on ladder,
Yeah,
that I guess he started when he's like 13. It's not even a good example. Okay, let's just take for example another 16-year-old, some random 16-year-old that is just
how
now getting
about
into Overwatch.
yeah.
Like their experience, do you think is going to be so much different from yours? Do you think that will lead them to be a better overall player in Overwatch, or is it just they're going to be very tailored for the current game as it is? Do you think that experience, like with those different rule sets, helped you be where you are today, or would it have potentially hurt you if you had a different rule set than it is right now?
I think right now, like if you're coming into the game, I think you have a like somewhat better direction of like how to get better, what role you want to play and how, like where to improve. Like back then, it was like I don't like the experiences back then was like pretty valuable too because you got to play Roadhog, you get to play all these other roles like that outside of your like flex DPS role
And we saw Roadhog
or
being very important for you
yeah.
in the previous year.
It helps to play other roles because you learn a lot too that way. Like playing Brig like really helped me understand, like how like the backline works, or playing Diva like Hog, like playing tank in general just helps you like think about like how to hold space. It's like all a good experience I think playing
Okay,
other roles.
so it's all good, and so there isn't really a downside to experiencing the game as it is now, though, versus when you started playing. It's roughly
Yeah.
equivalent. Okay. Well, we're gonna have one. This is not even really related to anything, but this will be since we're very focused. We've talked a lot about your progression and how you've gone from team to team and what happened there. What do you think is the number one most valuable thing that you did as a player, or maybe someone else did as a player, that current players that are looking to move up? Like, let's say because the structure is very different, right? Like, we're no longer playing in the Gosu Gamer weeklies and getting our ranks up there. We're hoping to go through Open Div to Contenders to Overwatch League. Is there something you think that is crucial that really helped you, whether it be your mindset or how you practice or how you talk to people, that players should be doing now to help themselves get in?
Be doing now. I think just not giving up and like quitting the game. I mean, obviously Overwatch isn't like exactly a completely like stable esport to be in, but
So you think you
I
shouldn't
think
just be really pissed and quit and then come back again like
and
a
then
month
come
later?
back. Yeah. You shouldn't just quit because like you lose so much practice and like knowledge from the game like when you just quit and then come back. Um, Definitely not quitting. Just if you really want to go big in Overwatch, you really have to commit the time, really grind, like put in like the hours. It's like extremely hard. Like this is not easy. Being a professional esport player is not easy. You have to like really commit the time. Yeah.
It's
Just
just
don't
that
quit.
simple. It's just
Don't
that
give up.
simple. Hit the
Yeah.
grind. I mean, to
Hit
be
the
fair, that
grind.
is a very good piece of advice. I think there's always like nuance to it, but the reality is like you have to be good enough, but also put in the work. Very few people are so good that they just get auto passed into things. Like sure you have your I'm
Yeah.
37s, but that didn't really work out for him in the end.
Yeah.
Honestly, he's back in Contenders. But it's still a good run. Like, he did a season of Overwatch, he's back at Contenders. Like, it's pretty miraculous considering how many players. Like, JCB, the player he used to play with, is still in Overwatch. He's a coach now.
Yeah, but I think he recently
Did he? Did he retire? I
quit.
thought. I know.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
pretty
most
sure.
recently he was still listed with Skyfoxes in like the 20, maybe after the Mayhem Winter Classic, perhaps, which was still this year though.
Yeah, I still follow him on Twitter, and he tweeted like 2 days ago, taking a step back from Overwatch to focus on
Oh
IRL.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, still, either way, it's like very few people are given the chance to be. Like, you have to be really good and put in the work if you want to take advantage of your chances. So I think that's a really good piece of advice.
And be realistic.
Yeah, be
You know.
realistic. I agree. Realism is very good. You don't think like, I think I got very lucky with my progression at times too, because I was like a perfectly timed moment of like Huckleberry's dying, and Verbo is poached to Immortals, so I go to Bird Noise as an LG, right, and then that leads to the rest of things. Like, you do have to be realistic about what your chances are going to be sometimes, like, and where you're going, and not have crazy expectations.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very good piece of advice, Mr. Blasé. That was a very excellent interview. I'm looking forward to seeing how the Outlaws do the rest of this year. Hopefully we see what the makeup matches are soon, because we haven't.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what's going on right now. Actually, it's wild.
I've heard that they might be making some news on it very soon, actually. So that's good. But I'm excited to watch you guys continue to play. Like, we were in the what's the name of the Discord? I can't remember. It's the one with everyone that with Corey and Annalyn and all of them. So we've been.
Oh yeah.
We've been chilling there for a while. So I'm glad to see that you're succeeding and you're on a team that supported you, and now you guys have turned it around. It's very important overall. So it's good to hear that everything's going well and you guys are continuing forward. And I guess one more final question, since this is a live action. It's a very last minute, like it just happened.
Yeah.
If you can comment on it, comment on it. If not, give whatever, just say no. But Flame's departure, do you have any sort of insight, or any sort of words to say, like, how do you think Flame was a good GM to you? Do you think Flame treated you well? What do you think about that situation?
I mean, I don't think I want to say too much on it, but
Mm-hmm.
I think he was a pretty valuable person. Like, I think he was a good GM overall. I mean, he like I found out just like this morning too.
Yeah.
Like, things are weird right now. I don't know.
I would imagine so. You don't
I'll
have
just
a
say
GM.
that.
You don't have a GM right now, so
Like three of our staff got cut today, so I don't know.
Three?
I don't know what's happening. Yeah, 3.
Interesting. Wait, who else got cut? Was it publicly announced?
Mezzer said he quit.
Oh, Mezzer.
He announced it. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. I want to say one thing. I want to say about Mezzer. He's a really hard worker. I
No,
really
Mezzer's
appreciate
great.
him.
I've never heard
Yeah,
anything
I love
other than
Mezzer.
great things about Mezzer, and he was originally the coach for the Outlaws last year, and then he transitioned into this administrative role. So I've heard nothing but good things about Mezzer. So he just quit. He wasn't even fired or anything. He just said, like, I'm done. I'm leaving. I'm out. So
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, you don't know about that. Okay. But you would say overall they were very valuable pieces to your team, and you thought you liked working with them when they were with you.
Yeah, I appreciate their hard work. So I don't know what's going on right now. So
Okay,
I,
understandable.
I know as much as you guys do actually.
Yep, completely understandable. It's just a developing situation. Well, that's going to be it. Thank you so much for coming on, Jeff. I appreciate it. Everyone, I think this is a really good episode. Actually, you gave a lot of great insight.
Thank you for having me.
And that's going to be Hero Select 1. We'll see you guys. It'll be on YouTube. It will be on podcast format as well. Blasé socials are there on the screen if you want to follow his Twitch, if you want to follow his Twitter, and see what epic trolls that he does. He posts a lot of really good memes. Well, not a lot, but he does them occasionally. So very good. So that's going to be it for episode 1 of Hero Select. Thank you guys for tuning in. And that's it. I'm leaving the range now. Bye-bye.